All right, seeing as it's 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the regular Township Board meeting, March 19th, to order. Would you stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome to the meeting. First, looking for approval of the agenda, but I would like to ask if we could make some corrections on the agenda. I would like to ask, due to we have a short board, 2 members this evening, that I would like to ask to remove the 2 zoning ordinance amendments and also the sewer rate saw grant, due to the fact that I would prefer to have a full board here when we look at those.
I move we adjust the agenda to delay the voting on the zoning amendments issues and the saw grant until the next meeting, provided we have a full board at that time.
Support.
We have a motion with support. Any other discussion? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And I do want to apologize. I just want to mention that one of our board members is not here this evening. His stepmother passed away, and also his aunt this week, so that is why Brett is not here tonight. All right, we are to our public comment session. Anybody wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Give us your name and address. Seeing none. Announcements. I don't believe we have anything. All right, consent agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes of March 5th Township Board Workshop and the minutes of March 5th Township Board regular meeting.
I move we approve the consent agenda consisting of the March 5th workshop and the March 5th board meeting minutes.
Support.
We have a motion with support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to business. We'll start with Chief Beauchamp.
All right, good evening. I'd like to make a recommendation for the Assistant Fire Chief position that's been open for a few months now. We had 2 applicants, and we conduct interviews and assessments, and I'd like to recommend that Captain Mike Dyer get appointed to Assistant Fire Chief. He did an excellent job on the interviews and the assessment, and he exceeds what's required of the job description.
All right, we're looking for a motion.
I move that we approve Captain Mike Dyer to be promoted to Assistant Chief of the Comstock Township Fire Department.
Support. Okay. He said.
Bob for support. Do we need a roll call on that one?
No.
Yes.
Okay. So, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations.
All right, with that approval, we're going to have a badge pinning ceremony on March 27th. That'll be a Tuesday evening, and it's a regular drill night, so we're going to do that at 6 p.m. at our station 9-2 on East Stage Avenue. So the board's more than welcome to attend that.
Okay.
6 p.m. March 27th.
March 27th.
Tuesday, March 27th.
Where was it at? I'm sorry.
North
Station 9-2 on H Avenue. All right, and I do have the 2017 annual report. I'll just kind of give the highlights of that. First, in the cover letter, 2017 was once again an increase in calls for service for the department. We ended up with 1,599 calls for service. The department is still continuing to work well with our neighboring departments through training and responses to be sure that not only our residents are protected, but our neighboring communities are as well. As we know, the department suffered the unimaginable experience of a line of duty death with the passing of our fire chief, Ed Switolski. Chief Switolski was struck by a traveling motorist on I-94 on June 14th at 10:14 p.m. while getting ready to clear the incident. A motorist traveling at a high rate of speed hit the concrete median and bounced across the highway, striking the chief. Though high-quality care was immediately delivered by his fellow firefighters, paramedic, and emergency physicians, he ultimately succumbed to his injuries. This was the first line-of-duty death that the department suffered. The department had amazing support from departments and agencies all over the region, government officials, and the public. Since the line-of-duty death, the department honored the fallen chief at every opportunity imaginable. We also are continuing to work on best practices for handling roadway emergencies. The department is staying current by meeting or exceeding the fire department related training for fire, hazardous materials, rescue, response, and medical services. We do this by a strong paid-on-call system that staffs 3 stations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year-round. The department has a top-notch staff that works hard to provide the highest level of training, fire prevention, public education, and vehicle maintenance to ensure we can handle the calls for service. I'd like to thank the residents, business owners, and the Comstock Township Board for their support, especially during and after the passing of Chief Switolski. The members of the Comstock Fire Department are residents as well, and we serve our neighbors with the highest level of training and care. We are also exploring new avenues of staying proactive in our community with community risk reduction concept. And I'll get into that just a little bit further here. Operationally in 2017, I mentioned we had 1,599 calls for service. We averaged 4.38 calls for service a day, and our response time was just over 4 minutes, 4 minutes and 22 seconds. In 2016, the previous year, we had 143 overlapping calls for service, so simultaneous calls going on. In 2017, that went up to 159 times that we had overlapping calls for service. So having that well-trained, sufficient number of personnel on our staff, is crucial. And just a few stats: our busiest hour of the day is 4 p.m. Our busiest day of the week is Wednesday, although a close second is Friday and Saturday. And I'll hit some timeline, some incidents, kind of highlighted some significant fires, vehicle accidents, and a lot of the public relations events that we took part of throughout the year. In May 18th, we had a significant loss in property on East H Avenue with a significant fire. We did dedicate a page on our significant events and activities to Chief Switolski, as you can see on the timeline. June 24th, we had some probationary firefighters that graduated from the Fire Academy. On August 26th, we were joined by Texas Township Fire Department, Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, Portage Fire Department with some water rescue operations training. In September 1st, we welcomed 7 new hires for orientation, and we were a little nervous at that time because just about a month prior to that, I think we had 1 application in our application pile, so we ended up gaining quite a few at the end there. So that was much appreciative. October 7th was our annual open house, and we also did our push-in ceremony for our new engine 913. Let's see, November 18th, we did have a fatal fire last year. That was at the Comstock Motor Court Hotel, and a significant damage loss reported there. On December 18th and 19th, we honored our personnel for their years of service, and we had quite a few big ones at milestones last year. Lieutenant Dave Watson hit 35 years. Captain Randy Dowd had 30 years. Lieutenant Terry Simpson had 25 years. Firefighter Phil Padgett with 20 years. So some big numbers last year, a lot of years of service. As far as training goes, we increased our documented number training hours to over 6,000 hours, which is pretty significant for our size department. We trained on the new engine, we trained on a new boat motor that we received through an Enbridge grant. Something we're really proud of is we took part of a new EMS protocol for advanced airway management, and it's called iGel, so it's an advanced airway that first responders can do, and we've already seen great results from utilizing this airway device. And we're continuing our officer development training. On the fire prevention side, as I mentioned, we're really looking at this community risk reduction model. We're trying to see what we can do. And not that just hanging smoke alarms is not important, but we're looking at bigger, more proactive avenues. We're really looking at our fire safety inspection with the businesses. We're still getting in the schools and doing a lot of education there. Station tours, a lot of students, a lot of families come through the stations. CPR training, every year we get more and more calls for that service. And we're on the fire investigation response team for the county, so. A lot of good things with community risk reduction that we're exploring. On the vehicle maintenance side, we're very happy to boast that we have a pretty significant fleet, and thanks to the efforts within, we spent just under $14,000 for vehicle maintenance, and there's departments our size that are spending $80,000 plus to do the same, so we're very proud of that. Thank you, Assistant Chief Dyer. The last part of it I just included this year was the Pride Care report. So that's a report that they compiled, and that's their response time over the whole year on how well they did. And Pride Care is our contracted service with the township. So that was a lot of information. Was there any questions I can answer at this time?
Trustee Camber?
Chief, on the Pride Care report, take for example the month of January, has priority 1, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes for priority 2, 12 minutes priority 2. Are there, and they're showing the number of calls for those, and then late calls. How is that supposed to be interpreted?
Well, part of the issue with this is we do have a contract that holds them accountable for it. Part of the issue, what was going on earlier in the year, was that the city of Portage was going back and forth between Life and Pride Care for their ambulance provider before they decided to ultimately go with Pride Care. So staffing levels on both were kind of fluctuating, in particular Life. So they had personnel they're paying for 1 month, and next month they're kind of not as busy because Portage is a very busy community. So both sides, both ambulance companies, seen some influxes at the beginning of the year. Once Portage decided and honored the contract, the responses leveled out quite a bit, so staffing levels in those companies.
Well, like the 8 minute and 10 minute versus the 10 minute, are those the number of calls I've responded to within 8 minutes? Is that what the 57 is, or?
Yes,
And
number of
then
calls within 8 minutes.
priority
yes.
ones that took 10 minutes were only 3?
And they had a lot, in that month they were heavy at 13 late calls that month.
And what are late calls?
Late calls, they did not make their response time. Now, it could be because they were busy. It could be
Okay,
because
so
of
the
roads.
8 or 10 minutes is what they're expected to be there by?
That's correct.
So they could arrive sooner and
Absolutely.
still fall in that category?
Yeah.
I understand,
So
thank you.
they didn't meet the parameters within those timeframes.
All right, that explains it, thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for the hard work. All right, we'll move on to superintendent.
All right, so we say we took off the sewer rate to be discussed when we have a full board. So the next item I had on there was a request from our Parks and Recreations Director, Vanessa Street, to have Rachel Hopkins, which is her, I guess, assistant, full-time, to be sworn in and authorized to write enforcement tickets, and then to take Gary Swanson to be removed from writing tickets. So the board would just need to make a motion approval to allow Rachel to be able to write tickets. Mostly the tickets that they write are parks related. If somebody doesn't have a parking pass or different avenues, so.
All right,
Superintendent?
Yes.
Hess, this should be a resolution, so I'd like the motion to be we hereby resolve
Okay,
to appoint Rachel to write tickets and to remove Gary.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Does that include handicap parking violations
Yeah.
in parks? I move that we resolve to appoint Rachel Hopkins to be sworn in to be authorized to write enforcement tickets and that Gary Swanson be removed.
Support.
we have a motion with support. Do we need roll call on that, Attorney?
it's a resolution, so let's do a roll call.
Roll call. All right, keep track of that. All right, trustee Pratt,
Yes.
trustee McIver,
Yes.
supervisor Thompson, yes? Trustee Amos,
Yes.
trustee Camber,
Yes.
treasurer Paget absent, and clerk Money absent. Resolution's passed. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, next, just some information, just kind of give a recap. Supervisor Thompson and I attended last Friday, the emergency management follow-up along with Chief Beauchamp. Just to kind of give a recap of who, what, when, where, you know, what we could do better. Pretty good meeting. They captured a lot of comments, what different communities did well and what maybe they needed work on. I think the consensus there was somehow to get more communication out to the residents along the river, you know, in a timely fashion. I know that they contacted different avenues, you know, the media, but there were still residents that felt that there might have been more needed communication. According to our stats to date, we had 3 residents that the power was cut by consumers, so they had to restore power and get have it re-inspected. Also, we've had one person so far on our fill out an application to get a new furnace and water heater, which these applications and private funding was donated to Advia Bank, and Mary Gustus at the community center is handling those. So if anybody that's out there still is in need of some type of support, they can pick up an application at the township or at the community center, because there's still some private funding help out there for the need. To go along with that, we do have coming up March 26th, the week of March 26th is our curbside pickup. So if anybody has any items that they want to discard, they can start to put those out on Saturday the 24th, and then the pickup will start the 26th. And it usually starts from the north, so up by Myers, and then it'll work its way down, so. But we ask that everything be out on the 26th. Don't try to guess on what day your pickup is, or you might be SOL, so. Anything to add to that?
Chief Beauchamp, would you like to add anything as far as the emergency management meeting?
No, I don't think so. I think, you know, we discussed our rescue efforts. But really it was about, you know, the clear communication. There were so many things going on, and we talked about how there's different genres, different generations, and how they receive the news notifications. Some are looking for a newspaper, and other ones are a quick snap on social media and it's out, so it's really hard to address everything. But then I think the confusion about the dam bid versus, you know, all the other factors with it. It really wasn't a dam issue, as a lot of times we tend to point to in this area, so.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to make sure that people, make that clear to people, the dam is not what started our flooding issue. It was the 4 inches of rain that we had and the amount of snow that was on the ground. With the ground being frozen, it had no place to go other than to the waterways. So it was not because of the dam that we flooded, so. Yes.
I would just like to say that I own a building down there, and I was down there at noon, and there was no water in my yard, and so I stayed there a little while, and then I left, and at 10 o'clock at night, I received a phone call from my son, and he was telling me that 2 blocks down on my street, that some lady was talking about her basement was flooded, and so I drove down there at 10 o'clock, and when I drove down there at 10 o'clock, my yard was flooded. And I was totally shocked how fast that water came up. And the next morning when I came back, the water was 6 inches deep in the street.
There was a lot of, on emergency management side, there was really, because of all the factors with the ground saturation.
Right.
Frozen, and they really didn't anticipate it being as bad as what it did. As much snowfall that was to the east of us, that normally doesn't happen this year.
Right.
So all the factors, just was hard to analyze it. It really, they wanted to give more warning, but it was kind of like, well, is it really gonna do it? Are we crying wolf? What happens when we cry wolf too much? And, hindsight was 20/20, I think, in this case. It just happened fast.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I was totally shocked with no water in my yard, and then coming back, 8 hours later, and my yard is flooded. And I had to drive through the water to get to my building.
And obviously the last time it was this bad was 1947, so. Trustee Cameron, did you
I
have?
don't know, I wasn't here.
Yes, I have
Me neither.
2 questions, actually. One, was there a release of water from the dam?
Yes.
There was an additional, but it's a spillover style dam, so really, it has to go somewhere. So the way it's designed is I understand that the volume increased because of what was coming behind it from Battle Creek and beyond.
Is there any way to notify residents when that's happening? Because if I understand it correctly, at that point, the water rises rapidly.
What I understand, it
Downstream.
didn't hit the threshold of what would be considered an emergency as far as the dam. It was because of all the factors is why the flooding happened. If I understand.
Yeah.
Correct.
I understand it was a
9,
lot,
yeah.
but when it hits the threshold where you're gonna have a rapid influx from the dam, is there any way to notify residents downstream?
That-
I got something when it hits that, is that it didn't hit that.
Yeah, it's 9,000 gallons per cubic feet or something. It hit, it first they had released it at 5,000, then they went 6,000, and 71.
Was the maximum.
The sheriff did make a comment on that because that was brought up it's owned by, was CTS, now it's a different company, but that the company's a private entity, and they're trying to get answers of maybe getting better communication with the sheriff's department.
I would think so, because when it rises that rapidly, people, at least in this area, seem to think that it comes from the dam. When it moves, 6 inches in an hour, that's a rapid rise. And comments I've gotten from people is there ought to be some way to let people know it's coming. At the very least, blow the siren and have people call and find out what's going on. And it's flooded in the past, and although it seems worse than since 1947, back in the 78, there was a severe flood when the water was over the road on Lake Street, and all this area down here was flooded as well. The same thing happened. There was a rapid rise, and a lot of that was from release from the dam. I think there should be some way for us to be notified, whether they're a private entity or not, if they're going to discharge additional water from the dam. I think that should be addressed somehow.
Yeah, and that's something they took from the, the emergency book that they have here, and I know the sheriff is spearheading, as we discussed in that meeting, to try to get some type of better communication on.
It's a private entity controlling public water. So, the other question I had is availability of sand and sandbags for residents. Were people in our community notified of where they could get that to prepare for the possibility?
Yes, it was-
mentioned.
It was on the news.
Yeah,
It was
It
on,
was on the news, and they were
Did
asking
we have
for
something here in the
volunteers also.
township available?
when we found out about it, we put it on our website. That's really what we had to work with here as far as getting it out to people. And if anybody did call, we were able to tell them, because at the first emergency management meeting we went to, they wanted everything directed through 211. Because that way they could keep track of anybody, whether it was from Comstock, Kalamazoo Township, city of Kalamazoo on that information. So as soon as we received that information, it was put on our website.
Well, I hope we learn from the hindsight to have the foresight to maybe in the future put out a newsletter, or in the newsletter as well as a website, where these emergency materials can be gathered in advance in case the worst case scenario happens, you know, if they don't know if it's gonna reach that stage or not. Some people like to prepare just in case, and it certainly would have paid off this time. So hopefully we can prepare better in the future for something that'll never happen. So,
Right?
Any other questions?
All right. Last thing with Treasurer Paget not being here, I'm gonna ask Superintendent Hess to speak on the streetlights.
Yeah, last meeting, we had brought up, for 2018 to move forward with a plan to add, I can't remember the exact amount of streetlights. It's basically, I think, total 80-something, almost 100 streetlights. And we discussed it in our last meeting, and then attached, you'll see, is the program sheet for Consumers Energy to move forward with that. The cost to move forward with installing, I thought I would have the number of,
Right here,
I can't see my glasses.
1007.
No, I was looking for the number of streetlights.
Oh, sorry.
I thought we discussed it was 80-some last meeting. I think trustee Camburn asked if they're $100, why that was a little bit more money.
It might have been because of the, excuse me, it might have been because of those, the set of streetlights where the models stop.
It's actually on page 69, but you just have to add them, I guess. It'd be 47. We have 47 on M96. We're gonna have 16 on south side of M96 from Sprinkle to Henning. We're gonna have 5 on east side of Sprinkle Road and M96. And then a bunch of single.
81
street
total.
routes. 81 total. Thank you for the addition. So the total installation price was $10,070. We budgeted $10,000 even, so I would probably ask if they would make a motion to accept this to also amend the budget for $70 at the same
Yes.
time, so.
All right. With that being said, then we're looking for a motion to approve that. $10,070 with amending the additional $70.
And to authorize somebody to execute this contract.
Yep.
We want to authorize Superintendent Hess?
That's
Or
fine.
just,
That's
I'm not
fine,
sure.
yeah, yeah, I
Treasurer
can
Paget
authorize that.
normally handles that one.
So moved.
We have a motion with support. Any other discussion?
I would like to say that streetlights that have been put in, Sprinkle Road, down East Main, certainly have improved safety in those areas. Visibility is so much better than it used to be, and I heartily endorse continuing with this program, especially the style lights that they're using. It's so much better than it used to be, much safer.
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, could you clarify who made the motion for the recording secretary?
I made the motion.
Jerry
Okay, and the second?
made the motion. Who was, I'm sorry, who was the second?
I'll second.
Terry. I'm sorry, I know I heard a second.
And that would be as resolved on page 68 of the packet. Is that?
Yes.
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 All right, we have a motion with support. No other discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Anything else, Superintendent?
Nope,
Yes?
that,
Okay. Next, we have our reports, which consists of February 2018 ordinance report CABA February 2018 permits and financials, and Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department January and February 2018 reports. Next, just for informational, we did receive a letter from the state of Michigan, Department of Treasury, in reference to our AMAR. You want to speak on that audit? Or?
The state of Michigan goes in cycles. About every 5 years, they do a audit on the assessing department. This year, ours came up, so as we speak, the assessing department is getting together files and handing them over. The state of Michigan subs that out to a third party to do the audit on, to make sure our calculations and our assessing department's doing their job. So that is being performed as we speak.
Thank you.
Has the state been made aware of who the supervisor is here in Comstock? Oh,
Thank you.
no, I haven't. That should be corrected if they don't know.
Yes, I know that was on the letter. Somebody was contacting them in reference to that. All right. We are to our second portion of public comment. Anybody wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is David Benak. Sorry I came in late. I'm one of the Democratic candidates for the U.S. House seat. Coming in today just to say hi, to introduce myself a little bit. Let you know that what we've been doing as a campaign we feel is the most important thing, regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, is participation in getting the democratic process back together again. And so that's why we've been reaching out, and we've knocked on, as a campaign, we've knocked on over 15,000 doors to get directly to people as much as we can. And the reason we're doing that is to promote town hall meetings. And the next one we have is going to be in Kalamazoo. So I encourage everyone who can to show up and ask some questions. It's going to be on the 22nd, so that's this Thursday coming up at 7 p.m. at the Millwood Middle School. So that's the Millwood Middle School, 22nd at 7 p.m. And what I've seen, so why I'm into this, is that after 2016, things just seem to have been going downhill. Yeah. And to me, a lot of that can be traced to the really corrupting influence of big money in our political system. And that's not one party or the other. I think that's the political system. And the only way to fight back against that is to get groups of people together and have discussions about what we think we need to do going forward. And that's been kind of the cornerstone of the campaign. And I hope you can join us and you can add your voice to our conversation, and hopefully we can find a way to bring the district together so we can get the best possible solutions for everybody here. So again, it's David Benak, and come out if you can on the 22nd at 7 p.m. Millwood Middle School. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we're down to member comments. Trustee Pratt?
Yes, I just would like to make a quick comment concerning the passing of Joanne Betts. She was a great person, has helped me and many others in the community over the years to make the community better. And I had a pleasure of talking with her just a few months back, and to express my appreciation for the things she had done for me and make sure I was aware of what was going on in our township. And so she was a great person, and I'm sad for the family, and I will be speaking with Brett as soon as I can. And Carl Betts, former high school teacher and well known also in the area. They're very good family.
Thank you. Trustee McIver?
I'd just like to thank Matt, Dave, Mike, congratulations on your work and what you guys have done in the department. It really looks impressive. I'd like to thank you for your hard work as well. And the new streetlights have been great too. It's gonna be slick.
All right. Trustee Amos?
I'd just like to thank everybody for working on this. I mean, this is a huge amount of material just to read through, let alone all. So a lot of people put a lot of effort into all this information, and I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Trustee Camber.
I also would like to express sympathy for Brett's family and the Betts family as well. I would also congratulate the fire department on the excellent work with the report, and congratulations to Assistant Chief Dyer now, very soon. I would also like to compliment our planning commission, planning board, for all the efforts that they put into when they come up with these amendments to the zoning commission regulations and so forth. Although we're not voting on the chickens tonight, they put a lot of work into this. You can tell that they did. But I feel compelled to also mention that there's a lot of opposition to chickens in this community for a variety of reasons. Odor, noise, predators like coyotes and skunks and stuff being drawn in to where the chickens are, health and safety, vermin, waste disposal, odor from remains, etc. And, you know, how are we going to make sure that people comply with this? There is the opportunity to have chickens in non-platted areas. I think in the platted areas, there's going to be a lot of opposition to this, and I think we need, before the next meeting, all of us to really investigate this thoroughly before we vote on this. I'm coming to find out there's a lot more people that, although there was no information, or nobody that spoke up at the public meeting concerning this, there's a lot of opposition to this amendment that we're going to consider.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could
yes.
just add one real quick thing. This item that, for the Planning and Zoning Commission, March 22nd, this Thursday, is going to be the kickoff. And I wasn't sure the day that I was absent if that was mentioned, but I'd like to mention again just in case. But this Thursday at 7 o'clock, Planning and Zoning meeting here, the plan kickoff for the planning consultant. That's and I would hope that people would come and see what's planned. And again, this is a first step, but it's a very important step.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate what Dave said as far as the fire department. Again, congratulations on your promotion. Appreciate the great job you've done for this community. And again, our condolences to the Padgett and the Betts family. So, with that being said, meeting adjourned.